Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of Aunt Jenny and the Delayed Quest by Jim Burroughs. Aunt Jenny and her student and friend Sasha, together with Morwenna of the Fey Folk and 3 of the Marginalia, have arrived at the island fortress of Scathach, the Shadowed Isle. "If I may," said a soft, low, musical voice, "a traveler needs a good sack." They turned to see that the speaker was a tall, slender fay with a pushcart full of leather goods. He fetched a small rucksack from amongst its contents. It was beautifully crafted, of soft brown leather, thin but sturdy. He offered it to Sasha. "Oh, I couldn't," she declined. "Worry not. The straps are soft and well padded, and there be a belt. 'Twill be no great burden as you walk," he assured her in gentle fey tones. "No, I don't—" Morwenna caught Sasha's eye and raised her hand in a cautioning gesture. She shook her head in a small no. I don't know how to express my gratitude," Sasha recovered. "Oh, I have no doubt you'll find one who is in need." He smiled and reached out for the pot, started to help her put on the rucksack. Morwenna took Sasha's staff. When it was on, he slipped the pot into a pocket on the backpack that seemed just made to suit it. "Be well," he wished her, and turned to push his cart along. "Well, that was very kind of them," said Sasha to Morwenna and Aunt Jenny. "I wish I could have paid them somehow." "We should move on. I will explain when we have a moment," replied Morwenna. They resumed their walk through the town. As they made their way toward the castle, the crowd parted for a tall, lanky woman coming their way. She had a lean, whip-strong look. She was dressed in loose-fitting, dark leather pants and a billowy blouse of black silk. Her auburn hair was gathered in a long, loose braid. 4 guards followed in her wake. Soon she spotted them. "Morwenna!" she smiled as she hailed. "What brings you to the Shadowed Isle?" "I have brought you visitors from far and far, milady." "My lady, is it? This must be serious. Too serious for the streets?" "Aye," replied Morwenna. "And urgent? An emergency, then?" "Urgent, but not an emergency." "Good. Then I can still meet the boats. Walk with me and bring your friends." As they started off in the directions of the docks, she stopped and looked at Sasha, limping. "You're hurt." "Not too bad. I have a staff," Sasha replied, and raised it, "and a dwarven salve." "Ah, well then, if you've a dwarven salve, all will be well." They followed Scathach, for that is who the tall, dark lady proved to be, down to the docks where half a dozen fishing boats were unloading their catch. She paused and spoke to each captain and several of the sailors, assessing their success, congratulating them on it, and asking after their needs. She seemed to know every one of the sailors and addressed many of them by name. When all had been attended to, she led the party to the castle that overlooked the town. As they made their way, she explained the situation to the newcomers, pausing in her narrative to address the merchants, shoppers, and passers-by, and so it took the whole trip to spin the tale. The Isle used to be a small farming and fishing community that supported itself and the Shadowkeep, and the folk who come to me for training and the like. We'd a number of fine craftsmen, but the town was small. Then the blight came, and the raiders of she who was once a dragon. People flocked here for safety, putting a huge strain on our resources. Fishermen, boatwrights, chandlers, and the like came with them, and the fishing fleet grew. Companies came for training, and for a while I feared the whole community would collapse. The companies moved out against her invading armies, but many left families behind. The town and fleet grew, and the blight worsened. War brought shortages, and famine and death seemed not far behind. Our balance was precarious, but we survived, and the Isle grew. And then she attacked the Isle of Glass and laid siege and poisoned the waters around it. The poison and blight have greatly damaged the fishing, and once more I feared collapse. Our rights have outfitted the fleet to travel broadly on the Great Lake and up to the great rivers. This fleet just returned from Twilight and the Silver Stream, the moonshine, its great river, and as you saw, they brought back an excellent catch. Our northern fleet and even one up the Blackwater have also been successful. We've expanded our trade with Ilum Crown, the city of the summer fall, though they are hard-pressed as well. 'Tis important that I support, reward, and encourage the fleets, and so I hope that I have not too much shirked my duties to you as host. Welcome to the Shadowed Isle, and now to Shadow Keep. Come in." She led them to a small den off the great hall and motioned them to find seats on the couches, chairs, and cushions there. "Let us sit, and you can tell me what brings you hither." Now that they were off the streets, Morwenna made introductions. "Milady Scathach, allow me to present the Lady Jennifer, grandniece to the Jennifer of fond memory, who is known as the Forerunner or Little Jenny. These are her companions, Sasha and Three, scout of the Marginalia, along with the valiant Big Tom, Rudy, and Little Dickens." The last must have heard her name, because she poked her head out of Aunt Jenny's bag and greeted Scathach with a huge yawn, which the lady acknowledged with a soft chuckle. "A second Jennifer. Are you then the promised hero of legend and prophecy?" I wouldn't think so, ma'am, especially not at my age. Great Aunt Jenny often said that there were big things in my future, and that I would have travels and adventures, but careers as a nurse and librarian and years of tending a sick husband were all the adventures that came my way. Now I'm just Aunt Jenny, retired and occasional mentor to the girls of Winston Academy. I garden, walk, and talk to my animals. "I see you are wearing a familiar stone, the King's Eye." Scathach gestured to the amethyst pendant that Aunt Jenny was wearing. "Yes, it was an inheritance from my great-aunt. She left it to me when she passed away 45 years ago, but I only just got it. My, how long have we been in this world? We've been walking just forever, and the sun is so hidden. I think I napped a bit when we stopped one time for food and water." "My apologies, Lady Jennifer," said Morwenna. "It has been a day and a half that we've been together. You seemed not to be suffering o'ermuch from the lack of sleep. Folk from mortal lands can often go longer than they might think. And I did not want to suggest we stop in the blighted lands, not until you yourself requested it." "Oh my, walking for a day and a half, and that starting in what was the afternoon back home? I'd already walked 3 or 4 miles, I would say. Dear me." "Liam, see that rooms are made up immediately for Lady Jennifer and her companions." "Yes, milady," replied one of the guards, and departed. "Well, then, a day or two ago, May Day, the post, a messenger, delivered the necklace. It had been in the hands of another family member all this time. Not long after I put it on, we fell through a mirror into the Halflands. You called the pendant the King's Eye? I take it is important?" "Yes, indeed, quite, and its delay is in getting to you, well, it may explain a few things, but perhaps it would be best if you were more rested and well-fed before we discussed all that." Jenny smiled. "Now that you mention it, I am a little peckish, and sleep does sound appealing. Well then, let us see what the cooks have in the kitchen, and then get you to your rooms." "My lady," said the guard Leon, and then, when Scathach had acknowledged her, continued, "The chamberlain says that the blue suite is ready for them." "Thank you," said their host, and turned back to her guests. "Come, the kitchens are this way." "Thank you, ma'am," said Aunt Jenny, and smiled. As they made their way to the kitchens, she noticed that it was the first time they'd not been accompanied by guards since they met Scathach. Not long after, fortified with a small meal of bread, cheese, and fruit, Aunt Jenny found herself nuzzling into a down feather bed in a bedroom in a suite of one of the castle's towers. Chapter 5. The Quest Begins. She awoke with no sense whatsoever as to how long she had slept, but whatever the time, she felt better rested than she had in days. There was a ewer of water, a teapot, cups, and a bowl of fruit on the table. Across the room, a large wardrobe stood open, revealing a wide array of garments. The tea in the pot was steaming hot, and something rattled when she picked it up. Lifting the lid revealed a glowing crystal, perhaps quartz by its shape, immersed in the tea. She poured a cup and sipped it while exploring the contents of the wardrobe. Fortified by the tea and a handful of grapes, she dressed in an oversized peasant blouse of bleached raw silk and a calf-length green woolen skirt edged with a pattern of Celtic knots, brushed her hair and put it up in her usual bun, then stepped out into the suite's common room. There she found Sasha lounging sideways in an overstuffed leather chair, reading a book, Big Tom in her lap. Little Dickens was chasing some sort of ball around the floor, and Rudy came bounding over to Aunt Jenny. "You're up," called Sasha. "The animals got restless some time back, so I shooed them out here to let you sleep." "Thank you. Have you any idea what time it is? How long I've slept?" "Not really. Many hours, at least a night's worth. Could you ring the bell on that table over there? They want to know when we were all awake." As she walked to the table, Jenny asked, "And you, my dear, how did you sleep? How are you feeling? Is your leg improved?" "I slept the sleep of the just. No idea how long, but I woke up feeling much better. There was food and tea and a bookcase to explore." "What did you find?" "Cavendish's Blazing World. It was one of the few titles I recognized." "Well, then you stumped the librarian," admitted Aunt Jenny with a smile. "Very early science fiction, pre-Shelley." Sasha smirked a bit and set the book aside. "Do you know where 3 and Morwenna are?" "Three's scouting the castle. He said it's his job. Morwenna's been up for a couple of hours. She went off to talk with Scathach." Sasha got up, displacing Tom, who went right back to sleep as soon as she stood. Aunt Jenny rang the bell. A young woman opened the door almost immediately. "Yes, m'ladies, will you be wanting to break your fast fully now?" "Yes, please," answered Sasha immediately. "And could you let Morwenna and Lady Scathach know we're up, if that's all okay with you, Aunt Jenny?" "Yes, my dear," said Jenny, and then added to the maid, "Thank you." Breakfast proved to be a number of small, savory meat pasties, a broader selection of cheeses and fruit, tea, and watered honey wine. The smell of the pasties woke Aunt Jenny's appetite, and she and Sasha were still eating their fill when a guard announced Scathach and Morwenna. "Don't get up," said Scathach, "but may we join you?" "Please do, though I don't think Sasha and I have left much to share." As the door was closing behind the departing guard, 3 scurried into the room and hopped up onto one of the many chairs. "You look much rested, Aunt Jenny." Scathach retrieved a couple of pasties and took a seat in one of the easy chairs. "Morwenna has been bringing me abreast of things, but I should like to hear your own tale." "Thank you. I slept wonderfully, and breakfast is hitting the spot." "You'll want to keep especially good track of meals and sleeps until you get to the Halflands. It can be hard for those from mortal lands. You're used to clocks and bells telling you what to do. Know, too, that sun and moon, night and day, they pass differently from place to place and realm to realm." "I understand." "You were saying that the amethyst took you years in getting to you and arrived but a few days ago?" "Yes, it came by messenger after the death of my Aunt Mary, Great-Aunt Jenny's niece, who was in charge of her estate. Sasha was visiting when I opened the package, put the pendant on, and looked into the mirror that became I don't know what, a gateway here." "I take it that you knew my great-aunt. Well, at least according to the storybooks about her. You have an important role in Little Jenny and the Shady Lady of the Shadowed Isle." Scathach laughed. "The Shady Lady, an apt translation, I suppose. But yes, I did know little Jennifer. She was a doughty little gammon. At first we thought she might be the great Jennifer of the prophecies, but it became clear that she was the forerunner, the signal that the hard times were coming, and that the true Jennifer was still to come. I trained her some, and Maeve gave her the amulet, the amethyst, so that she and the true Jennifer could come to travel here. But go on, 'tis your tale, not mine." Jenny continued her story. "Our family has lived for several generations in a place originally called Hockomock. It's an Indian word, a Native American word, that means where the spirits dwell, and both the Hockomock Hills, where we live, and the great Hockomock Swamp, southwest of there, are said to be haunted, or homes to supernatural beings and odd occurrences. The mirror that brought us here used to be up in the big house atop the tallest of the hills. We call the house High Winds. Great Aunt Jenny gave me the mirror. She'd always said that it was very important and I should keep it. We moved it to the old gatekeeper's cottage, Windgate, when my husband and I moved there. When we passed through the mirror, it seemed like the landscape, the terrain at least, on this side was very like back home, so we climbed the hill to where High Winds would be. That's where we encountered Three, Morwenna, and the cockatrice. There was a ruined tower there. That all makes sense, Jenny, even the names. The hill on our side is called, or would rather translate as, Hill of Winds, and the tower, the High Tower of the Winds. It was the home of a mage, the Archmage of the Tower of the Winds, or perhaps the Tower Mage of Winds. The languages aren't quite the same. Jenny nodded, hearing this, and said, "The Windy Mage. He was an important character in little Jenny's journeys, and lived in the High Tower." Windy and shady. I think he would have liked that. Scathach smiled a little wistfully. Would have? Yes, he died at the hands of she who was once a dragon, the false Rahab. I'm sorry. Ah, 'tis not your fault, not really. 'Twasn't you that held back the amulet. What? You think that had something to do with his death? Almost certainly. If you are the great Jennifer, the woman of prophecy, the last queen of Avalon, well, then the lack of you to lead us, yes, it was a devastating blow and served well the mother of monsters. Me, the last queen? I'm just a nurse, a librarian, a gym and English teacher. And you have always been such? Well, yes, I went into nursing after college when I met Dr. Tom, my husband. After his death, I started working at the academy, put my BA in sports to work. I see. And when your great Aunt Jenny died, who were you then? Just a college student and an athlete. Didn't you compete in the Olympics? Asked Sasha. Oh, no, my dear, I didn't make it onto the teams, though it was close, Jenny replied. Sasha raised an eyebrow. Teams? Plural? Fencing and equestrian. My coaches said that if I'd just settled down to one or the other, I might have made it, but Sasha interrupted. But you were both a world-class horsewoman and swordswoman, just not quite good enough to make it into the Olympics in both sports at once. Well, it wasn't really like that. You make it sound so much like the background of a woman of prophecy, the last warrior queen, you mean? Sasha shot back. Well, no. Jenny looked down into her teacup thoughtfully. Well, yeah. Do you know how big an inspiration you've been to all us girls at the academy? Oh, my. So, Lady Scathach, Sasha began, legends say that you trained Cuchulainn, one of the greatest heroes of Ireland and Scotland. If a charismatic 20-year-old woman who could already ride and wield a fencing sword had come to you 40 or 50 years ago, do you think you could have made a warrior of her? Certainly. Fencing for sport is not the same as combat, but it trains the body and the reflexes. The art of the fence traces back to the rapier, claybeg, or bilbo, swords of serious combat. A fencer should master them quickly enough. A bilbo? Now that's a picture. Sasha laughed merrily. Scathach seems confused. I'm sorry, my lady. Bilbo is the name of a small character, a hero, about the size of 3 in a famous story back home. Wielding him, Sasha shrugged. I'm sorry, go on. You were saying that you could have trained Aunt Jenny to be a warrior queen? Why, yes, that was where you were leading me, I believe. 'Tis true enough. A hero is made by the strength of heart, not the girth of one's arm. I see no reason why Aunt Jenny, you, or your Bilbo could not be a great hero, warrior, and leader. If only I had been here in time, said Aunt Jenny in a soft voice. Not all is lost yet, Jennifer, not by fair shot. There is time, and the amulet has brought you to us. That suggests you've yet a role to play, does it not? I don't know. There was a time that I believed in omens, callings, and fate, but that was long ago. There was a long silence. Then Aunt Jenny and Sasha broke it together. What did the prophecy Aunt Jenny started as Sasha asked, Could you train me? They stopped, looked first at each other, and then to Scathach, who smiled. Yes, I could teach you, with your current teacher's approval. It has ever been my role, but, she shifted her gaze to Aunt Jenny, as to prophecies, that is not my strength. Such things are the province of hierophants, mages, and sages. Aunt Jenny nodded. Great Aunt Jenny's directions to me were to go first to the hilltop tower, the Tower of Winds, which you say was home to the windy mage. I suppose it was so he could tell me of the prophecy and what was expected of me. But he's gone, you said. Yes, he died years back. There is another who might be able to help, the scholar Alba Heath, a marcher lord in the Darkling Wood. And he would know the details of the prophecy? Asked Aunt Jenny. Best of any still alive. Aunt Jenny sat in quiet thought. And your student, Jennifer? May I instruct her in self-defense, as she asked? Yes, I think both of us could use that instruction. How far is it to this Alba Heath? A day or two's sail with the fishing fleet that arrived today to the land of twilight, and then a few days or so down through the Darkling Wood, assuming that you have a local guide. Less time if you can safely fly, but with monsters abroad 'tis not a journey I would recommend. And as you said, perhaps after some weapons training. Scathach started Aunt Jenny out with the small sword, a small rapier-like blade where her fencing skills transferred to a combat weapon, and from there to the larger rapier in what Scathach called the clay bag, a basket-hilted sword not much heavier than the rapier, but more suited to cutting as well as parrying and thrusting. In what Aunt Jenny took to be a couple of weeks, she became as comfortable with the small sword as she was with the fencing foil and épée that she had studied in her youth. However, she was quite convinced that a woman of her years had no business fighting with swords. She was remarkably fit for her age, but noticeably slower and stiffer than she'd been when she'd last fenced seriously. She could coach a fencing team, perhaps even a world-class team, but not keep up with them. Sasha, on the other hand, proved to be a truly remarkable student. Scathach proclaimed her a natural with the blade, and soon was concentrating on one-on-one instruction with the girl. For hours on end, she would throw Sasha any one of a wide variety of blades and challenge her to defend herself. The sword could be anything from the more dainty small sword or the rapier to the clay bag to the heavy basket-hilted claymore, and not only one-handed swords, but even hand-and-a-half and two-handed swords. Given Sasha's stature, agility, and speed, the clay bag with an offhand dagger quickly became her favorite, and so while Scathach would not allow her to become dependent on just that combination, it became the bulk of her training, with Scathach facing her with anything from the small sword to a massive two-handed blade intended for foot soldiers facing a cavalry charge. Yield, deflect, take control, attack, she schooled the girl, assaulting now with strength, now speed, now cautious probing. Once Sasha came to monopolize Scathach's time, they agreed that it was time for Jenny to seek out Alba Heath. Sasha would remain in training on the Isle of Shadows until her return. The trip to Heath's marches was likely to be the least dangerous leg of Aunt Jenny's quest, and it seemed more important that Sasha learn to defend herself, to defend them both, than join her on this part of the journey. Morwenna and 3 would travel with Aunt Jenny. The day before they set sail, Morwenna took Aunt Jenny and Sasha shopping in the town. Well, not precisely shopping. It was during that trip that Morwenna had finished her explanation of the workings of the market and Fey economies in general. You see, she said as they made their way down from the keep, we Fays, and many humans throughout the Halflands, do business in terms not of paying, but of gifting. I've heard some humans call it a gift economy. A gift economy? How does that work? Asked Sasha. Do you exchange gifts like a barter economy? She bit her lip and answered her own question. No, that's not how it worked with the salve and the backpack. They just gave them to me. She furrowed her brow in thought. Very good. Yes, sometimes we exchange mutual gifts when that makes sense. It can simplify. Other times we owe favors. That was not expected to be the case with your earlier gifts. You may well never see those folk again, and if you do, well, 'tis not a thing they would have expected. Then what did they expect? That you would balance your tally by gifting others. They, in turn, would similarly gift still others. Paying forward a debt rather than paying it back to the one you owe. That's an expression back home, paying forward. Yes, that sounds right. Well, that takes a lot of trust. How'd they know I'm the sort to pay forward? That gets me to why I stopped you when it looked like you were about to say you didn't know how you'd pay them back. Oh, yes. Within a family, a blood, a kind of folk, fair folk or dwarves or gnomes or the like, we rely on paying forward. Likewise, some communities of multiple bloods, if they are striving to act as if they were all of blood, blood flows is the way we often say it. Here, where so many have come to live under Scathach's protection, folk are striving to be of one blood, even though they are not, to be of her blood, as it were. More often, in times past, folk lived blood with blood and would pay forward within their community and would negotiate a mutual exchange of gifts or favors owed across bloods. As a last resort, one might pay with gold or silver coins, but that is reserved for dealing with outlanders and humans. Doing so suggests that the person offered coinage is not trusted, has little honor, or is not a part of any community within the Halflands. But by their gifts, they were saying to you, welcome to the community, to the blood of the Shadowed Isle. You had her escort, but did not seem to be under guard, and were an outlander. They treated you as a guest, a newcomer. To have offered to pay them for the gifts would have been an insult. Oh my, Sasha paused to take it all in. Thank you, they were so kind, I wouldn't want to insult them. Then you must accept their gifts and strive to be generous. So that day, Sasha and Aunt Jenny started shopping by telling stories to children who seemed eager to hear of faraway lands. Aunt Jenny tended a few scrapes and boo-boos among the gathered children and set the broken arm of a dock worker brought to her by folk who'd seen her with the kids. Sasha learned something about repairing nets and was able, eventually, to do so in a way that did not cause observers to frown. Aunt Jenny swapped balls of yarn with one Fey woman, getting, she thought, by far the better of the deal, and spent nearly an hour exchanging knitting and crocheting techniques with the woman. That led to the woman's son borrowing one of her crochet hooks in order to carve its duplicate in hardwood. At one point, Sasha took out her phone and used some of what remained of its charge to take a few pictures which fascinated both Three and the children. Three was so taken with the camera that Sasha let him take it around the town snapping pictures. The battery's charge wouldn't last long at the rate he was using it, but when and if they got back home to mortal lands, his pictures would make good souvenirs. In exchange for the use of the camera, he agreed to watch and feed Rudy and Big Tom. When they returned, Rudy was sporting a new collar and leash. Three took his new responsibilities very seriously and tended the little ones from then on. Both Sasha and Aunt Jenny were great hits in the marketplace and by the docks that day and came away with more gifts than they had sought. Soft leather boots, clothing both practical and decorative, balls of yarn and bags to carry it all in, a commonplace book and pencils for Sasha, and full stomachs from the fruit and pasties that had been on offer. And next time, we will follow Aunt Jenny without her companions on her next leg of the journey. Good night.